Following hot on the heels of our discussion about the Nelson Mandela Bay Day Zero, KwaZulu-Natal taps are running dry despite flooding in the area. What is happening over there and how can the business sector support us? With us today are the founders of the South African Water Chamber, Dr. Anthony Turton and also Fred Platt, and we've got a special guest joining us on the show today. Stay with us, we'll be back in just a sec. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Water Hour. I'm your host, Bridget Lambanda from Cape Town in South Africa. And our stream today is made possible by BeLive Media, StreamYard, and the South African Water Chamber. We're talking about the flooding in KZN, how that's impacted the area, why are the taps running dry, despite the fact that they've just experienced some flooding in the area. This is an audience-centric show, so we welcome your comments, suggestions for a future topic. Join the conversation today with our panelists from the South African Water Chamber, and our special guest is Hilton O'Dwyer. So with that, welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you.
Hilton, if you can just very briefly tell us, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll shoot over to Anthony and ask him to just give us a bit of background as to why we are here today and why we are talking about KZN, what is happening there.
Okay, yeah, I'm just an ordinary citizen in the area with quite a long background, which we won't get into right now. But we started an organization called the South Coast Water Action Group about 3 years ago, and we've offered services from the local community to the local municipality to help alleviate the problems that we are encountering. Last year we did get an open door. That door shut again, and at the moment we're looking at legislation to reopen that door and contribute as a community to solve the issues.
Thanks very much, Hilton, for that introduction to who you are. Before we shoot over to Tony to give us an introduction of the problem in KZN, Fred, can you just very briefly, for any of our viewers who don't know anything about the South African Water Chamber, can you just give us a quick introduction? Fred, apologies. Fred, can you give an introduction to the South African Water Chamber?
With pleasure, Bridget. So the Water Chamber was established as a vehicle to engage between business and government in addressing the very serious water challenges that we have in the country. So the South African Water Chamber has been represented at various levels within the presidency and the BPGI on the drafting of the National Development Plan, the water the Water Master Plan, the NIP 2050, and also in terms of the Water Reindustrialization Master Plan. But in effect, the South African Water Chamber has at its heart a reach out from the water industry or the formal water industry to government to say, how do we take hands? How do we look at these challenges collectively, and what can we bring to the party to, on the one hand, avert the type of disasters that we're currently seeing, but on the other hand, to ensure that we build capacity, sustainability in water, which is ultimately the ultimate economic enabler, and on which the economy and dignity of our communities is based.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that introduction to the South African Water Chamber. Anthony, can we ask you to just lead in with what's happening in KZN? Why the flooding? Why the taps running dry?
Yes, so let's just quickly focus this conversation. We are currently in the middle of a number of crises. It's not just one crisis. There's a whole family, a whole swarm of these crises swirling around us at the moment. So let us start off by saying that a couple of years ago, we had this Day Zero crisis in Cape Town that got international news for all the wrong reasons. And to a large extent, that was averted at the end of the day by the mobilization of massive amounts of technical capacity, which eventually alleviated the problem, but caused lasting damage to the reputation of South Africa as an investment destination. Then we had, roughly a few years after that, we had a word coming out of the Eastern Cape that the Nelson Mandela Bay area, as well as East London, was starting to face a similar Day Zero crisis. And that's been thundering around in the media now for a while. And we're now in a situation where in Nelson Mandela Bay, they've literally got a few days worth of water left, and they are absolutely on the brink of a total collapse. And we just heard now that the ministers announced that the National Department of Water and Sanitation will be taking over the management of the water services in that area because they are unable to reach consensus about what has to be done. But then we also tend to forget that there's been this ongoing problem in Mfuleni. Mfuleni, in many ways, was a precursor to the things that are happening in the Eastern Cape. Lots of court action against the Mfuleni municipality. People were indicted in a court of law, and there were certain court orders given, and ultimately nothing really happened because the municipal officials just refused to simply budge. They just wouldn't vacate their position, and they wouldn't fix what was broken. And we have such a similar situation in Welkom at the moment, where there's a group very much like this South Coast Water Action Group that's now come to the fore, and they are very much what Hilton and his group is doing, but apparently with much more success because they're linking up with the gold mining industry. So now we come down to KZN. So KZN has been buffeted in the last couple of years by a series of major crises. If it's not the excessive rainfall and washaways and flood damage but really serious loss of life, we're talking hundreds of people that lose their life in some of these events. We're talking about a series of extreme rainfall events that have hit the area. But at the same time, we're talking about this chemical spill, one of the largest toxic spills in the history of South Africa, up at the Mhlanga Rocks area, all of which has got to do with regulatory failure. And then, of course, we're down further south where we are now. I'm in the Port Shepstone area, and Hilton's a little bit further north of us. We have a large district municipality called Ugu, and Ugu is in absolute state of failure. Ugu is completely, totally unable to manage its water affairs, and it's a district municipality, so it supplies water to lots of small little towns. One of them is Heberdean, where Hilton comes from, and he's going to tell us now about the Heberdean crisis. So the question that we pose now is this Day Zero thing just localized in places like Nelson Mandela Bay, or should we rather be talking about lots of localized Day Zeros throughout the country? And if so, if the lessons that we are learning from these municipalities is that if they don't want to vacate their seats, if they simply sit there in a position of power and authority, they will block any attempt by citizens to restore the flow of water. So we ultimately start having a showdown between the citizens on the one hand and the government on the other. And as I sit here today, I've just made a post on my Facebook page got video footage early this morning from the Tongaat area, further north of here, where the residents of Tongaat have barricaded the town, literally barricaded the town. They're holding everybody hostage. Nobody can come in, nobody can go out until such time as water services have been restored. So we're starting to get into a situation now where we can almost say we've got a low intensity standoff on the one hand between the citizens who have reached the point of just being fed up with what's going on. They are fed up with the fact that government is unable to respond and react, and they are taking the solution into their own hands, which opens up all sorts of Pandora's boxes of vigilante action and all this kind of stuff. Not necessarily all of it is good. Some of it, in fact, is very bad. But nonetheless, that is happening. On the other hand, the citizens have got every right to demand fair services for the taxes they pay. We've got one of the most brutal tax regimes in the world, and we're actually not getting very much service for the tax we pay. We're not getting the bang for our buck, to use an American thing. So that's where we are today. I'm going to start asking questions now of Hilton, because just to explain to you, Heberden is on probably one of the furthest northern towns that is supplied by Ugu. Ugu District Municipality is located in the town of Port Shepstone on the Umzimkhulu River. And the Umzimkhulu River, being in flood, as it has been for the last couple of months, is very muddy, very turbid. So the quality of the water is appalling. It's almost liquid mud coming out of the taps. But of course, the flooding and the rainfall events have also damaged the pipelines. So you've got a broken municipality that is technically bankrupt, unable to pay its most basic bills, being hijacked to a certain extent by vested interests. Some of them are in the professional consulting fields, where consultants have now put down their roots into the cash flow streams, and they are in effect driving the municipality in certain directions, not necessarily in the interest of the public. We get a situation where the laws are not being enforced. Section 21C and I, for example, of the National Water Act is not being enforced in the Port Shepstone area, and that poses questions. But ultimately, while all of this stuff is thundering on in the background, we've got ordinary citizens who for weeks on end, do not get a flow of water. And you must remember that one of the biggest employers in this area is the tourism industry, and the tourism industry is severely affected by all of this stuff. So, Hilton, over to you. I'm going to ask you a question now. Just explain to us, please, explain to the listeners, just briefly, what the situation is like in Heberden and how Heberden is connected into the greater Ugu water supply area.
All right, yeah, thanks, Tony. Heberden is, like you said, we are on the last end of one of the lines feeding northwards from Port Shepstone. Any problems that occur between Port Shepstone and ourselves, which is about 25 kilometers. So any problem that occurs on the line between the two extremes does affect us, to the extent where we have a local community that hasn't been receiving water for 4 months, other areas 3 months, and ourselves just over 2 months. And you know, we do hear news coming across the different media platforms of people not having water for 2 or 3 days, and then the community is up in arms. We've never been up in arms about what we do. We're basically looking at solutions, and we do have solutions, and the effect that it has on the community is severe. We know that every elderly person, every sickly person, everybody is affected by it. Some people that can afford JoJo tanks and their own supply of water are less affected, but we have to realize that the majority of the community does not have the luxury of storing water. With the result, people are standing in queues in the street to get water wherever they can.
Okay, we're focusing on the solutions just now, but I'm just going to ask Fred. Fred, do you want to come in and ask any questions, or can I pose the next one? You're muted, Fred.
Sorry, I said carry on, Tony. It gives us a great background, I think, when Hilton gives it, and then we can ask some questions. Thank you.
Okay, so now Hilton has explained that there's not been any violence at this point in time over this particular topic. And as we speak here today in the Tongaat area, there is certainly a low intensity form of violence playing out there. And absolutely in July of last year, the Ugu area was in fact the precursor to the provincial-wide rioting and looting that took place. In fact, the area from Heberdean down to Port Shepstone was closed down about a month before the main event. I believe as a dry run. I believe it was deliberately shut down as the forces that were involved were flexing their muscle and getting all of their ducks in a row. So we certainly do have a history down here of violent confrontation. And there have certainly been protests further south of Port Shepstone that have been violent, where the police have been called in to quell the unrest. So we are on somewhat of a powder keg here that can go off at any moment in time. So with this in mind, it's very interesting that the South Coast Water Action Group has been formed by technically competent people. And what interests me the most is that Hilton has gone into a whole lot of legal frameworks that the typical person is unaware of. We think of the Water Services Act and we think of the National Water Act when it comes to water, but there's a whole lot of other bits of legislation that are also relevant. So I'm going to ask Hilton now to please just give us a sort of a highlight of some of the legal things that you are aware of and that you have been using now in the formulation of your South Coast Water Action Group.
Okay, yes. I think the word law enforcement comes to mind because, when you drive by in town, you see vehicles with signage on the side which says law enforcement, and it's a nice word. People like to see the word law enforcement, but the question is, how do you enforce the law, and how much does the normal citizen know about what the law says regarding service delivery in local municipalities? It'll probably take a morning or a few cups of tea to read through the different acts. The Disaster Management Act has got facility for community involvement. The Municipal Financial Management Act does have certain prescriptions in it. The Municipal Structures Act and like you say, the Water Act. All these laws have been written in a time where there wasn't anything like what we are experiencing now. There wasn't a time when water was just turned off maliciously or by politics. We're in a water-rich area. I drive over 7 rivers just to get to Port Shepstone. So there isn't a lack of water like the other places where we hear about day zero. But we're 3-4 months past day zero in certain places where you have a man-made drought happening. And the Disaster Management Act doesn't cater for human interference. The municipal acts and all the other acts that cater for community involvement at the moment is not aiding us in any way. So what we're looking at is using the sections in the different acts, and we're looking at having those updated to a more relevant discussion in our paradigm that we have now. We can go to court, but when you get a a mandamus in your favor, the court would normally say to the municipality to do certain things. But if local government does not comply to the law and province don't comply to the laws applicable to them, and the ministers don't do what they're supposed to do, and the president is not doing what he's supposed to do, and Moses is not doing what he's supposed to do, where do we go to? We need laws that are enforceable without having to go through lengthy court cases and huge expense. And I think that's quite achievable just by changing the wording in some of the acts slightly. We can put pressure on the minister and everybody else to not use a political backdoor that they're currently using.
Okay, now what you're effectively describing there now is the breakdown of the rule of law, because you are describing the fact that the law says that the minister must do certain things. The law says that a municipality must do certain things, but those certain things are not being done, and therefore the law is falling short because the citizens are now unable to go and find a remedy other than going to court. And even then, we found in the Mfuleni cases, etc., all it does is it says you must do what you're supposed to do, and then they still don't do it. So no one goes to jail and no one gets fined. And if they do get fined, it's your taxpayers' money that's used to pay the fine and to pay the legal fees to defend the government against yourself. So it's a very much of a futile exercise, but it comes down to really, it pivots around this whole issue of the rule of law and how the rule of law is broken down, and how as a result of that, the knock-on cascade effect as it goes throughout society. Fred, do you want to come in here on any of these matters?
Yeah, I think Hilton, it's obviously quite disturbing to listen to the practical on the ground experience that you have. It's also, an unfortunate situation when a community is reaching out to the state and saying, look, we're here to work with you, we're here to engage positively, and when that is not viewed within a framework of trying to find a solution, because as the chamber, we honestly believe that it's only through a positive interaction between business, civil society, and government that we can address what clearly are major issues. So my question to you, Hilton, would be: in an ideal world, what would you like to see? I mean, we're aware of the crisis, we're aware of the challenges you face, we're aware of the fact that you're reaching out, and we're aware of the fact that you say, look, you don't necessarily want to engage the legal route. What is it that you would like to see, and what if the powers that you are listening, what should they be doing?
Yes, I heard what Tony said, and I take what you are saying as well. The thing is, the law doesn't say the minister must do certain things. Sorry, I just want to kill this. Sorry, I just have to put this phone off. The law doesn't say the minister must do anything. It says the minister may. And the law doesn't say that the municipality have to do certain things. It says that these are options. So what we're looking at is, firstly, having the wording in the acts changed so that those are not options, that those are obligations. And then obviously, you can then look at omission, and you can look at negligence or gross neglect. Interestingly, in the Municipal Financial Management Act, it actually criminalizes the non-reporting of certain things. In the Water Act, It also states that interfering with the supply of water is a criminal offense. So what needs to happen is, firstly, if you read all of those acts, you can see that there's very friendly sections towards community involvement, and you need a neutral person involved in local municipalities, and that neutral person can be represented by the community. What we offered Ugu was to say that these specialists that Tony referred to are people that can move in and work side by side with all their departments. We looked at every department, be it procurement, finance, human resources, storage of spares, technical side, the training, the application of reparation of faults, budgeting. We really looked at every component of local municipal management. And what we said was that we have people in the community that can step in and become friends of those people in those departments. And firstly, learn from what's happening there before you start, trying to give any advice of any sorts. And then secondly, once you've learned what the challenges are, then you can involve people with knowledge and come up with solutions and help them to solve these issues. We all know that's not a very political correct way to work, because politics are often not considerate of what the real solutions are about. Sometimes politics is quite vexatious in the way that it's applied. But we had a meeting a few years ago when all the main people in province and local municipality came to the community, and they were talking about a whole lot of stuff, but it's really just shop talk. And I said to them, listen, this isn't rocket science. Plumbing is simple. A pipe is a tubular thing with a hole on each end, and with it's hollow inside. If the water doesn't come out the other end, it's not difficult to figure out why. So what we would like to see is that local government would have a place where private specialist companies or a specialist community group or a national team of advisors are allowed in, firstly, and then secondly to allow those people to speak into the system and to advise solutions, and for those people then to become the the reportable entity, or the reporting entity, if there are any things happening that shouldn't be happening. It's just that if you look at any problem, there's normally a solution. This solution is simple, but it's politically complicated, and I think if we can get to a point where we get around the politics, we can really solve the national issue.
So we've got a political issue that we need to deal with. We've got a legislative issue to deal with, but the people on the ground are left without any water by the looks of it. If I'm looking at the news reports going around, people are now drawing water from streams that are contaminated and all kinds of things. The legal route's going to take a while. Fixing politics is going to take a while. What can people do now to gain access to water, and what are the kind of risks that they're exposing themselves to, and how can business get involved? So, Fred, maybe if I can ask you, how can business get involved? Anthony, if I can ask you, what are the risks that people are putting themselves under at the moment, drawing water from streams that are contaminated?
Thanks, Brigitte. I think that the first and most important thing is that maybe traditionally business and politics have pitched themselves in opposition to each other, but we're all sitting on the same boat, and if that boat goes down, then we all sink. So it's critical to understand that when business is engaging in good faith, it does not have an intention of replacing government or undermining government or getting involved in politics, because that's way too complex for us to get involved with. We're simple people and we look for simple solutions. And those solutions are really driven out of a shared common destiny and a shared interest in ensuring that the community thrives. So from business's side, I think we have to, and that's I think part of the rationale for the chamber, is to formally reach out to government and to say, look, we're your partners in this. We're in this boat together, and we're here. We have capacity. We know that there is areas that are undercapacitated, and we know that there are challenges. But in many of these areas, we can come in, we can assist. And I think it was so beautifully put. We're not coming in without trying to learn and without trying to understand the challenges that you are facing, but rather to come in to say, give us time, let us understand your problem, and then let's look at our collective skills base, our collective brain power, our collective execution capability, and let's tackle this problem together.
Yes.
Thanks
Okay.
for that, Fred. Can we go over to you, Anthony? Can you tell us what are the risks that people are facing currently or putting themselves under drinking from contaminated stream water?
Yes, Hilton spoke about the fact that between Heberden and Port Shepstone there are a number of rivers. They're all small little first-order rivers. Most of them have been over-abstracted and they're in a very, very poor ecological state. Most of them consist of lagoons now. They're no longer free-flowing into the ocean, except the Umzimkhulu River, which is one that's still flowing to the ocean, at least on occasion. The problem with these rivers is that they're highly contaminated either by agricultural runoff. Remember, they drain agricultural areas. So there's all sorts of toxins and fertilizers in the water. In many cases, they're eutrophic, so you've got blue-green algae growing in them. But you've also got the unfortunate situation of what is known as necrotizing fasciitis, or flesh-eating bacteria that are growing in some of those rivers. There have been some cases in KZN of people who have lost limbs as a result of being exposed to that. The most famous of which is R.W. Johnson, the University of KZN professor of history, who lost a leg after bumping it in a lagoon and being infected with these bacteria. So the water that is being drawn by individuals, certainly from the surface, from rivers, is highly suspect and fraught with risk as far as I'm concerned. We also have a situation in this area where we've got hepatitis A. And hepatitis is, this particular form of hepatitis is also waterborne, and that is also associated with the fact that we've got a large number of septic tanks in the area. We generally don't have waterborne sewage in the area. So all of the septic tanks report to the nearest river in some way or other. So surface water here is generally highly contaminated and not healthy at all. But there's one thing that interested me about what Hilton was saying now about this: the fact that certain of the laws criminalize certain actions, and some of these actions are very specific. So, for example, the hindrance of or the disruption of a service is a criminal act. Now, there are two aspects to that are important. The one is the fact that certain officials fail to act in the role that's assigned to them, and fail to ensure that those services are delivered. That, I think, has got some kind of criminal liability to it. But the other important thing now is where there's either a corrupt practice or, more importantly, where there's active sabotage taking place. Now, I referred earlier on to the fact that the July riots last year, their precursor was here in the Ugu area, And at that point in time, I went public. I made a certain public statements that went viral. And one of the public statements that I made there was that we are seeing on the ground high levels of organization. This is not just a spontaneous uprising. Remember, at that point in time, it hadn't yet gone to the whole of KZN. It was still contained in the Ugu district area. And I went public saying that, no, I see there's very high levels of sophisticated planning here, because one of the elements of the planning that is quite evident is the sabotage of very precise components of the water infrastructure. This is being deliberately damaged, deliberately sabotaged, which implies that someone has looked at a map, someone's looked at a plan, what is known as a PNID. Someone's looked at those PNID drawings and said, that's the vulnerable place there, take that out, and all of this is going to happen as a result of it. So there is this certainly some element of sabotage taking place for whatever reason, for the perpetuation of a political claim, or for a contract to supply water through tankers, or a contract to supply JoJo tanks, or something of that nature. But this is something that happens in KZN. So these are all criminal acts. And now we get to the fact, so if they're criminal acts, why is there no prosecution? Why is there no investigation? Why is there no follow through? And I think this is the problem, because while Hilton talks about the fact that to a certain extent his group is interested in legal reform, about changing the wording in certain acts, I would say that's pretty much a long shot. I would say we first got to survive long enough to get through the next general election before we can even start thinking about legal reform. I think survival is more of a short-term thing. What are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do, next week? And Hilton, I'm going to ask you now, because I happen to know that where you are, there's a piece of land that's available that has got certain water allocations to it. And so please just tell us about the planning around that and the role that could potentially play as an alternative water service provider.
Okay, yes, I think the example that I can use is walking into a general store. If you have 50,000 products in a spa, you don't buy all of it, but at least you have got the option. At the moment, we don't have an option. We have to take water from the municipality, and we have to take electricity from Eskom. And with regards to developing alternatives, this farm behind me here is one such example where you can actually develop an option for people to choose whether they want to take supply of water from the municipality or start looking after themselves. This farm has got a 32 megaliter dam, which has never run dry. It's in a riverbed or on a riverbed, and it's got boreholes, it's got reservoirs, and the idea there is to set up a model. Let's call it a water farm. I think we all know about wind farming and sun farming, but water farming hasn't really become a topic for discussion as yet. But I think water farming in this instance is a good way to start. It would probably cost about $1 million, or around 14 million rand to buy the farm, set it up as an entity that can extract water from subterranean sources and surface water, clean it and supply 2 or 3 villages in the area. There's enough water. The villages are quite small and close enough for us to roll out a plan like that. I think the challenge there would be for the municipality to support and buy into it. Excuse me, I just want to close that one down. The municipality will have to buy into a plan like that, or at least just support it. And if we can do that sort of thing, and we can get all the paperwork and the structures streamlined, then I believe it would be a franchisable, or not necessarily franchise. Franchise sounds like you want to make money out of it, but it would be a model that we can duplicate and triplicate and roll out countrywide to communities like ours, and we'd know what the financial viability of it is. So and we're close enough to the sea even to do a desalination exercise as well. We still don't know exactly, to what scale you have to do that sort of industrial application to make it viable. But surely we do have options like this, and we can get started with it straight away.
Is it a case of throwing money at the problem? Is that going to fix it?
No, I think if you throw money at a bread, you don't lose you don't lose your money, because you can still eat the bread. But in this instance, we have to come up with solutions, and we don't have a budget like what local municipalities got. I mean, I think they're looking at R1 billion plus budget, of which they're only spending 2% of that budget to supplying water. In our case, we have to look at financially viable models that's not dependent on local government firstly, but once you get that going, then you will get local government buying into it, or supporting it, or financing it, because they will see it works. Like Tony says, it'll take a long time to get all the laws changed, but it needn't take a long time for us to have practical solutions on the table.
Okay, see, my comments to that is that the municipality is not going to buy into it, because they're going to see it. Firstly, it's not covered by current legislation, and secondly, they see it as a risk to themselves, because ultimately they make money by the on-selling of water, so they've been cut out of the equation now. So I think it's politically unfeasible at this point in time, but I think this is the direction that the country's going to go to, because what it does is it opens up a grey area now. The whole conversation we've had today is about the fact that we are living in a breakdown of law and order. There is no real law and order. So the laws that we do have are no longer enabling laws. The laws that we have are now being used to disable solutions. And this is the problem. So we get to a situation where, unless we can resolve that matter, we then get to the next logical step down that journey, and that is about revolution, where revolution throws out all the laws and says the laws aren't working for us. We're gonna revolt now, and we're gonna reset. We're gonna change the constitution and change the laws of the country. We don't want to go there. So here we have a situation in KZN, certainly in the Hebridean area, in the Ugu district area, where there is a very high level of goodwill. You've heard it today. There's a very high level of goodwill from the local community, notwithstanding the fact that for months on end, they've not had water, or at best, the water is erratic. When I want to go and shower at night, I can't guarantee that I'm going to have a shower, because, believe it or not, in order to get your shower that's not too hot or not too cold, you've got to have a certain stable supply of water. So I either burn myself with too much hot water, or I freeze with too much cold water. I can't get the balance, because the pressure is all over the show. So these small little things, some of them are bigger than that, when there's a total breakdown. But nonetheless, these small little inconveniences all add up. But notwithstanding those inconveniences, there's still a very high level of goodwill between the community here, and they're willing to work with government. They want government to succeed. They don't want to replace government. They want it to work. But they are completely sidelined. They are stonewalled. They are kept out of the room. And I think this is the frustration. Hilton has tried on many occasions to reach out. He's actually got voice notes. He's even got documentation that refers to formal meetings that are happening, which are then just cancelled, or the can is kicked down the road. And what this does ultimately, it drives bad behavior from the public, because the public start realizing that goodwill is not rewarded with goodwill. Goodwill is regarded as being a sign of weakness. And that, of course, now starts driving more radical behavior. And that's what we want to avert. That's what in the chamber, we are trying to bring about this middle convergence position. But in order to find convergence, we also have to understand the risks of not succeeding in that convergence. So, Fred, I don't know if you want to say anything else. I don't know what our time's like, Brigitte. Do we have to start wrapping up now?
Well, Fred, I do want to switch over to you, because obviously it's not just the people that live in the area that are impacted. Businesses are also adversely affected by the non-availability. The impact on business and what is it that businesses can do to come on board to resolve this situation? Because obviously, if we look at where things are now, we don't have months to sort this out. What are business going to do? Are they going to pull out of the area? If something doesn't change, what can they do to fix this?
Well, I think the important thing to understand is that water is the total underpin of an economic of a society. So any economic development, any economic activity is underpinned by a secure supply of water, and this has been like that throughout all the ages. So the debate is not even for me one of whether business will pull out, because eventually business activities will not be able to sustain itself if there's no water. So I think the critical underpin of the transformation of our economy and the rebuild and the societies, and of course providing dignity. We talk about everything, but basic dignity is totally dependent on the availability of water, as is health, as is so many other critical components of our society. So from my perspective, there's an urgent appeal. I must just say that we're getting an incredibly positive response at national level. I think that the will is there. I think we're starting to see a very focused national department, but service delivery is felt at municipal level. And that is where the issue is. So as business, I think we need to intensify our efforts. As the chamber, I think we need to engage around these issues and engage at all levels of government, like we have been doing now in Nelson Mandela Bay, and which I think we're managing to unlock a discussion where we're getting people around the table to say, okay, fine, what are the solutions? But it's disheartening, because on the one hand, we're really seeing a will at central level to start addressing and to come up with a comprehensive strategy, but the implementation at local level is a problem. The political environment at local level, and then there's many, as Anthony has said, there's many other agendas at play, which are both within and outside of that political environment, which then makes it incredibly difficult for business to operate. I must take my hat off to Hilton and the guys for the perseverance and for the still being where they are and still reaching out and still saying, we're here, we want to work with you. And I think it's commendable, but I think at some point in time, government needs to start listening to communities that say, we're here to help you, we're here to work with you.
Thanks for that, Fred. It's believe it or not, it's time to wrap up. So can we just have a final round of comments? Hilton, can we start with you?
Yes, after about 3 years of trying, we have got an open door with the parliamentary committee, the COCTA committee, to give them a motivation and for them to consider for us to get a date to come around the table. The parliamentary committees are very productive. I've been on those, and it's a level playing field. We can get the ministers and all the big people and business and ourselves around the table, and within a day or two we can have proper agreements happening. So I think over and above the solutions that we're looking at, and obviously the frustration and all the the possible business interventions that we can do. The parliamentary committee, I think, is a very low-hanging fruit for us to make use of sooner than later.
Thanks very much, Hilton. Can we go over to you, Anthony, next, and then Fred, if you can, we can have your closing comments.
Yes, I would like to commend Hilton and his group at SWAG for what they're doing. I think they really are a shining light of the benefits of cooperation. It's extremely frustrating, and in reality, the progress that they've made has been quite small. But nonetheless, they look at the spirit, look at the happiness, look at the willingness to engage. I think this is absolutely commendable. In reality, unfortunately, the South Coast area has got very, very few viable businesses at the moment. The agricultural industry is in various forms of distress. They are big businesses in the area, agribusiness. For example, the sugar mill, the southernmost sugar mill, is on the Umzimkhulu River. That has shut down or is in the process of shutting down. So sugarcane is moving out of South Coast, believe it or not, and moving up further north. And so the agriculture industry is in distress. And there is no other industry. There's a little bit of mining here in Port Shepstone. There's a quarry that mines rock for Portland Cement, that manufactures cement in Durban, and some of that rock comes from this quarry here. But the quarry is now also under distress because the railway line needed to supply the rock to to Durban is failing. It's broken or it's stolen or pieces are missing, etc. So that's a problem. So in reality, we actually have a highly distressed business community here. What used to be lots and lots of small businesses in the form of tourism are almost universally under severe distress as a result of the COVID restrictions. And then on top of the COVID restrictions, there are people cancelling their holidays, etc. And then ultimately, why would they come here when the media talks about the fact that there's no water and you can't flush your toilets? So the whole area is really distressed, and there's a growing level of social unrest happening here, a growing, simmering undercurrent here. Things are going to bubble over as they did in July last year, and that's what worries me the most. So I'd just like to close off by saying that this reservoir of goodwill still exists, but it's not inexhaustible. And what I'm fearful of is when that goodwill runs out, then you're going to just see the free-flowing anger. We're seeing it happening up in the north now, Tongaat today. Keep watching what's happening in the Tongaat area. There's some, Verulam, that sort of area. There's very, very deep sort of seated issues happening around there. And ultimately, KZN is lurching forward as a disaster area. It battles from one disaster to the next. It never really fully recovers from the previous disaster. And the political response is generally quite slow. It's quite superficial, and it's more of a public theatre than it is of actual real meaningful impact on the ground. It's more display about the minister showing empathy and saying that another R1 billion is going to be released, and there's a big fight about who's going to get that R1 billion and what's going to happen with it. Doesn't really filter down to the end results. So I think we are entering in the next 24 months. I would say we're entering an extremely interesting time in KZN, and it can go one way or the other. And I don't think there's any guaranteed outcome in KZN. This is the canary in the cage. I'm normally try to be positive and optimistic, but I'm afraid when we talk about this area, optimism is starting to become a little bit thin on the ground. It's like Marmite on a toasted sandwich. It's spread very, very thin. So we've got to get thicker jam, rather more jam and less Marmite. That's what we need down here in KZN. So over to you, Fred.
Thanks, Anthony. And Fred, so if you could just give us a final comment and a call to action for businesses from the South African Chamber.
Yeah, I think Tony has spoken about a number of issues, and Hilton, and I think it's critical to understand that both economic activity and social cohesion, which is what we're talking about. You know, social cohesion doesn't come through the raising of a very big flag. It comes around the well. And historically, that's where people have met, that's where people engage, and that's where societies are born, and that's where societies grow. When we take that away, the inevitable is that economic activity, leaves, and social cohesion breaks up. So, as far as the businesses community is in, get involved with the South African Water Chamber. Let's all take hands together and let's put a unified call out on societies and communities like this to say we're reaching out our hand, but we need to elevate that call and escalate that call in terms of turning up the volume to say, listen to us. We're here. We're here to help you. We want to work with you, but we also understand what the consequences are if we don't take each other's hands and address this. So as the South African Water Chamber, we want to support communities like this. We want them to get involved with us, and collectively we need to start engaging and being a little bit more forceful in saying, come and talk to us. I'm very excited to hear that the Parliamentary Oversight Committee will be meeting, and I believe that at that level that there's a lot of positive developments. But I think at the end of the day, as I say, delivery happens where people are living, and that's where we need to focus our attention.
Thanks very much for that, Fred. We also want to thank the rest of our panelists, Dr. Anthony Turton, Hilton O'Dwyer, Fred Platt, also from the Water Chamber. This was very insightful. Thank you for joining us for this conversation today. We were talking about KZN. Thank you to everyone who has joined us live and those who may be catching the replay. If you do want to join us on the next conversation, please reach out to us here or reach out to the Thanks, everyone. See you on the next episode of the Water Hour.